Y'all hear that?
That was on my head.
Okay, so
Letting everyone know.
just so we're clear, we are now recording. Fabulous. Okay, welcome everyone to those who are live and to those who are watching this on the YouTubes for however long we decide to keep this one up on the YouTubes. This is our recruiting call. For those, our intention for this call is to share different approaches, perspectives, and tips to think about as you approach the recruiting process. So for those who are questioning or are new to the process, and for those who are already in the process, for you to gain new insights. We have a couple wonderful special guests who will be telling us about their perspective. They have a depth and a wisdom that's really, it's an honor to have them here, and they're coaching for us this summer. So we will introduce them in just a moment. So first, before we dig in, if you want to have a piece of paper and a pen, I'm sure at some point we will link in the comments a worksheet that you can, that's already pre-done for you. But for now, if you wanted to take notes, it's up to you. Again, this is being recorded, so it'll be on our YouTubes for you to go back to. But we're going to talk briefly right now about the 4 different phases of the recruiting process. Now, this is from my perspective. This is kind of the layout that I work with kids on. There's lots of different ways to approach the recruiting process, and every single coach and administrator, former player will have a new perspective for you. So at the end of the day, one of the most important things you can do is be a student, ask questions, find mentors, all of that. So I've identified that there are really 4 pillars of success, or 4 different phases that you go through when it comes to the recruiting process. And we'll have a video that's linked eventually in the comments here for each of these phases. But the first phase is going to be your mindset phase. Mindset is, for high-performing athletes, they know that mindset is at minimum 50% of sports performance. What you do mind gym-wise is super, super important. And we'll go through this book in the mindset phase video, but Mind Gym, if you can see it, is one of my favorite books to suggest. It lays out sports performance in terms of mindset very strongly. But again, we'll go deeper into that. But really, in your mindset phase, you've got to start laying out your vision. It's got to start from within. Yes, you can approach the recruiting process by going to tournaments and then just fielding emails and sifting through the emails and seeing where you want to go. Really effective if you start from your own desires, right? So really answering and living and immersing yourself in the question of, what do you really want? What do you want your college experience to look like? What do you want your recruiting journey to look like? Things along the lines of big school, small school. Do you want to be in a sorority? Are you going to want to do a lot of volunteer work? What type of team culture are you looking for? So again, we're really going to dig into this in a mindset video, but to give you an idea, you really got to lay out what you want. And those are hard questions, especially when you're a high schooler and you're like, I don't want to think about da-da-da. You got to think about it. What do you want? Because then you can reverse engineer that and achieve it. Another question you'll need to answer in terms of mindset is, how hard are you willing to work to get it? Realistically, will you be hitting the wall 30 minutes a day for the rest of your time in high school? Well, if you're not, then I don't know if top 20 D1 is even in a potential breath, right? Like, it's just, there are different commitments, and it's okay. Just be honest with yourself. What do you want? And then in terms of mindset, what tools are you going to need? mentally, physically, emotionally? What team do you need to surround yourself with? If you are a ninth grader and you have desires and you're a brand new ninth grader to lacrosse and you have desires of going D1, top D2, top D3, your training program, your learning curve is going to need to be very steep. So what tools are you going to have to get there? Do you have a ladder? Do you have a training program? What coaches do you have? Strength and conditioning? What nutrition are you going to be? All of these things need to be considered if you're going to make a really effective plan, which is the second pillar of success. The second phase of the recruiting process is planning. So mapping that out, your ideal college roadmap. So really laying it out step by step, month by month. Are you playing lacrosse year round? Are you going to play basketball so that you can train your footwork for lacrosse? Are you just going to commit to lacrosse? Begin asking those questions. And then once you have that, that's my puppy. once you've laid out what you want and you've begun laying out your ideal college roadmap, then you can make that daily, weekly, monthly success plan. So how many minutes a day are you going to be on the wall? What are you eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? What's your hydration plan? All of these things really filter into being an optimal athlete. And then the third phase, which I'm excited especially to have Caitlyn Corace on here, who's talking to us from a college coach perspective. She's the coach at Catawba College and has coached at other institutions prior. You get into the connections phase. So now you've gone through the mindset phase, you've gone through the planning phase, you've made a plan, now it's time to execute. In terms of connections, who are you going to reach out to help you get there? What mentors do you have? What network do you have? I didn't get into Davidson College only on my lacrosse merit and my academics. I found alumni within my network to write me letters of recommendation, and that solidified and helped my case. So when you've found that institution that you want to go to, that you would be happy at, even if you blew out your knee the first moment, knock on wood, let's hope that never happens, but will you be happy there? Once you found that place, then it's time to full court press it, right? How are you going to build a relationship with that coach? How many different ways are you going to be able to, and these are skills that you're going to take into life. If you want a job, if you there's so many reasons to be able to lay out what you want, build a plan, execute the plan in community with mentors. This is a great process, even if you don't end up continuing to play in college. And then you learn to contact college coaches. So you're going to start figuring out, and with guidance, what does an email template look like? Maybe how can you when can you make a phone call? When can you not make a phone call? And these are questions that I'm excited for Caitlyn to be in here on as well. But these are all really important skills to develop. Check your grammar in English in your emails. I just want to go ahead and if you need someone to edit your emails, just send them to me. I cannot have you guys send them out with errors. And then once you've done all of that work, you enter into that final negotiation phase where you're going back and forth with coaches. You're having conversations. Maybe it's you decide that specific college that you've spoken to for a few months, once you've negotiated within yourself that it's not a fit. How are you going to work that relationship, transition that relationship with that college coach? Because you never know when you're going to want that college coach on your side. You never know if you're going to want to be their assistant someday, or the coach that vouched for you wants you to transition that relationship accordingly with that coach that you've been working with, aka don't ghost. All right. Don't just ghost people. It is wonderful to reach out and to be honest, and it's good practice in life too. So there's the 4 different pillars, the 4 different steps that at least I've identified, that if you work kind of with that plan, you're at minimum going to have more structure than the like, let's see who emails me. That mindset, planning, connections, and negotiations phase. Wonderful. Now I have spoken for a while. I would love to begin asking Caitlyn questions. And I will point to you once I have pinned you. Or no, I remove pin. I'm going to remove the pin. So it'll just beat bop back and forth. Great. Okay, so Caitlyn, first, do you want to introduce yourself and share a bit of your experience and what led you to be able to have this college coach questions conversation?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Caitlyn. I have been coaching for about a decade now at the college level. I was at 24, a first-time head coach of a new program. So I was there at Lincoln Memorial University in Tennessee at the Division II level. That was my first time at Division II as well, actually. I was there for 6 years, and then this past October, I got the job at Catawba, which is another Division II school. I had done my previous assistantships at Division III schools, and I played Division III. I've also coached club for a couple club teams from a team called out of Connecticut, and then another team out of, we transitioned into the Yellow Jackets North team. I've also coached at the Maverick Showtime lacrosse camp, which I don't think they still have that on the women's side anymore, but it's a big men's recruiting camp, and they had it for the women's side for a couple years, and I did that I think for 2 or 3 summers, where it was a 3-day strictly recruiting camp for all levels. And you had to be, nominated to go there and all this kind of stuff. So I've had a lot of experience with kind of both sides of that recruiting. And then, of course, every summer I am at, tournaments X, Y, and Z. And then on the recruiting trail, throughout the year as well. So I think I have hopefully enough experience to help everyone out. And I've kind of seen it all. So I'm happy to help, and I'm glad to be here with the minors. I know this is a new club that's getting into kind of to help the future of this club.
Yeah, excited. Okay, Caitlyn, Kate. What do you look for in an athlete during the recruiting process?
I'm going to start with on the field, because that's really kind of the start in terms of when I'm starting to recruit someone. That's what, my first go-to. On the field, I'm looking for if you are doing certain things for your position. I understand, in every level of the divisions, understand that at the high school level, no one's going to be this, or if they are, that's great, but no one's going to be this perfect lacrosse player at a certain position. No one's going to have all the tools yet. There's still always things to work on. But I'm looking at, at your position, are you doing certain things at the level that you're at that you should be doing, and then more in terms of hustle plays, whether it's going for those ground balls, hustling up, even if you miss a pass or make a mistake, making that adjustment to try and get the ball back, or just doing certain things. And then, if you're a defender, are you communicating? Are you sliding? Are you breaking out for the clear and being involved in that aspect? Because I want to make sure that you can handle the ball as well as play good defense. Are you doing in the midfield? Where are you in transition? Are you on the circle? Where, how are you helping your team move the ball? And then, from an attack standpoint, some examples would be, what are you doing off ball? Are you cutting? Are you opening up lanes for your teammates? And then what are you doing, on top of the normal things you should be doing at those positions. It's kind of looking for those other things because, again, even if you're not doing it perfectly or I'm seeing flashes of it, I at least see that you have some of that lacrosse IQ and that everything else, as long as you're running hard and doing all those things, we can work on that at that college level, to get you where you need to be on the field. Everybody's got to start somewhere and everybody comes from different coaching. I understand that even though you may be coming to my program, you're coming from a high school team, a club team coached by different people. So as long as I see that athleticism and those other things, that's kind of what I'm looking for in terms of on the field. And then, of course, your body language. And then how are you with your opponents, body language or communication with them, if there is any. The officials, your other coaches, things like that. I'm always looking for those things as well because you want to make sure that I'm getting someone who is mature and doing what they need to do on the field to help their team. Off the field, again, it's that communication piece. Whether I reach out to you first or you reach out to me first, however that kind of falls, I want to be able to be speaking to someone and having a back and forth. The amount of times that I've had kids, have good communication at first, and then all of a sudden I don't hear from them, or it's like days later I'm getting a text message. That things like that is just, it's just not good business for yourself. You're not helping yourself, sell yourself and show that you want to be a part of a lacrosse program. And then, on the phone, sorry, I have things written down. Are you prepared with questions? Are we having a conversation on the phone? I know it can be intimidating, talking to a college coach and there's nerves involved. And I totally understand that, but you've got to be able to have a conversation. So have questions prepared. The amount of times that kids have said, "Oh, I have this written down," and I'm like, read off your question. It doesn't have to be, organic if you're too nervous. I'd rather you be prepared and have questions than not, because if you're just going, yeah, I'm not sure, I'm like, I don't know what this kid wants. So you've got to vocalize your needs as well.
Yes, I'm so happy that you said about the preparation. Like, coaches don't show up to practice without a practice plan, unless they're like mad seasoned and like they can, but you don't walk. I wrote out what we're talking about tonight. Like, it is okay. And in fact, it's better to do that to do the legwork ahead of time. And then you can flow through the conversation and not have that because your emotional hijacking potential is high if you're nervous. And then you're like, don't do that. Well, thank you. And what is the best way to communicate with you in terms of tips, tricks? What would you say there?
I would first start out with an email, an introductory email. It doesn't have to be super, super long, but just to give the coach your information in terms of where you're from, your school, your club, your what you want to study or major in, if the school has that, and and if you're undecided, that's fine. Put in the email undecided. But if you have GPA and test scores, just like a little kind of bio of you, so that when coaches are putting you into their system, they can fill in that information, and then when they do set up that phone call with you, they can talk about, okay, you mentioned nursing in your email, or you mentioned education, whatever it may be, and so then the coach can also be prepared to tell you about those programs. And I would just or even if it's just a text message is usually kind of after that email phase, after a response a little bit. And then what I like to do, and not every coach is like this, everybody kind of has their own philosophy, is once I get an email or I send an email and get a response, then I usually try and set up for a phone call later that week, or whenever both parties are free. And it's usually just a 20-minute phone call, again, just to kind of get to know you as an athlete, answer any of those questions you have, and then we kind of move on through the process from there. But I'm big on phone calls because I like having starting that conversation and getting to know you after speaking with you instead of just conversing on an email or through text message the entire time and then having you visit. I like kind of having that initial phone call. Um, but not every coach is the same. It may be through all email. It may go from email then to text. But whatever kind of, those are the three kind of forms of communication. But email, I would say, is your first like initial go-to.
Excellent. Thank you for that. What would you say are like deal breakers or red flags to you? What makes you say this is a no, thank you?
Like I said, going off of that like body language and things like that I'm seeing when you're playing, that I just, it's just a turn off. And I sit in that tent with the 12 to 15 other coaches that are all huddled under those tents in the summer tournaments, trying to get some shade while we're watching some lacrosse. And when I tell you that the conversation under that tent, when we see it, a student athlete, with bad body language or, talking back to the refs or coaches or anything like that, the amount of coaches that are saying, that's not good. And they're crossing that kid off automatically, even if they, haven't seen you play on attack yet, they've just seen, a certain instance, it's an automatic kind of red flag. No. Um, and then, again, on that visit, or on that phone call, again, being prepared and just I'd like to get a sense of where you're at with the process as well, or where you're at with, maturity wise and things like that. So if you're answering questions, if you're not answering questions or giving me kind of just answers, I'm kind of like, I'm going to be a little bit, that red flag is going to be up if this kid is a maybe, because they're not vocalizing, if they're even interested. And then, same thing on a visit, if you're kind of not giving, any answers, or your parent or the person who's with you is the one asking all the questions, or I'm not recruiting your parent, I'm recruiting you. So I want to make sure that I'm learning about you and getting, because I want to make sure that my team will feel that you could be that you could be a fit with my team as well. It's not just about if you're a fit for that school. It's about if I think you're gonna fit in culture wise and personality wise with the team. So, if you're arguing with your mom or dad on the visit, or having, giving them attitude, that's a turn off to me completely. And also just, for a parent, on the sidelines, when we're at those games and I'm under that tent and we see a parent yelling at the refs or yelling at their kid even, which I've seen a lot throughout the years, I'm automatically like, ugh, like, I don't know. That's not helping you, because, that um, doing that is showing me that when, let's say, if you're on my team and you're at our games and that parent is doing that, we can't have that type of atmosphere either. So, it's about you and making sure that, you're doing the right things, and it's not about what your parents doing and all of that. So we've got to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page with that kind of behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We're training parents all day. I'm like, nope, that's just, it's going to be a hard no, guys.
Yeah.
What would you say the biggest difference between college lacrosse and high school lacrosse is?
Um, I would say the commitment, just overall, is a lot different. And that's not to say that it's a hard commitment, or, again, depending on the level you go to, um, speaking from Division 2 and Division 3, there really isn't that much different in commitment, because you're there for obviously academics, but lacrosse is a big part of it. Yes, Division 1 is a little bit more heightened. There's more time that you're out on the field doing individuals, doing lacrosse work, but you're still putting in a lot of hours at the Division 2 and Division 3 level as well. More so than you would at a club if you were interested in playing club lacrosse, or in or just, I don't know what if there is anything else actually, but it's about understanding that, yes, you're going to be there for academics, doing what you're supposed to do, but then your expectation is that, we're putting in the work in the weight room, in individuals, in film room, and, out on the practice field and game field. And then along with that, it's everybody else that's there has that same commitment. Sometimes at the high school level, not everybody is there to, eventually go on and play college lacrosse. You have girls that are newer to the sport or just playing for the high school experience and the team experience, and that's great. But at this level, that commitment's different. So everybody's there for kind of those same reasons. It's to represent your team or your university and play for a conference championship and a national championship, whatever that may be. And it's understanding commitment and wanting to kind of immerse yourself in that process.
Totally. Absolutely. I would agree. The commitment. And it's exciting because the minors, I mean, we're absolutely continuing to evolve a philosophy and a mindset that kind of gets you more and more prepared for that. So now, what would you say your favorite part of collegiate lacrosse is? Final question. What's your favorite part?
I couldn't really hear that.
Okay. Am I back? Can you hear me?
Ooh, Taylor?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Who's asking what's my favorite part of collegiate? Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay. Maybe I'll need my video off. What is your favorite part of collegiate lacrosse?
I would say, to go back to commitment again, while yes, that commitment is a lot for a lot of people, but having a group of 18 to 22-year-olds that commit to wanting to help build your program or help bring you to a championship is a special thing. And I love that process of starting the year in the fall or in August, but it's fall for college lacrosse, and kind of making your way through that year and seeing kind of the team grow and get better and hitting each milestone and getting better as you go. And each year is a new team, a new group of girls, a new group of skills. And I just love that whole process and kind of seeing everybody get better, work together, that team chemistry that builds, and just the whole process of it. I love, and just, I'm a very competitive person and I love to compete. So this is why it's the perfect career for me. And, it just, getting to compete every day is just a lot of fun. And I don't see this as a job. I see this as, just something that I do and that I love to do. I do want to actually, can I just circle back to one thing I'd said previous? Whether it's in that, once you're on that visit, I also like when one of my main questions that I ask is, where are you at in this process and how can I fit into your timeline? Some college coaches say, this is our timeline. Some, have that timeline in your head of where you're at, and then listen to if they're like, I'll be there with you for whatever your timeline is, or if they're like, this is our timeline, this is what the timeline you need to fall under in order to be considered for maybe a roster or scholarship position. So that's something that to keep in mind as well when you are on the phone or are on visits, because that's a big part of it as well.
Yes, perfect. Such a good point. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we are going to shift gears, and Camryn is going to share with us. So Camryn is a rising senior at Converse College, so she'll be providing us a college player perspective, someone who's been through the process from our area, and has been through a few years of college so far as well. So Cam, do you want to share with us a little bit about yourself and your journey thus far?
Yeah, sure. So, hi. I started playing lacrosse in 6th grade, and I always like to tell people why I got started because it just shows a little bit of my competitive nature. So I have two sisters, but one who's 2 years older than me. And she started playing lacrosse before I did. My dad was trying to get both of us to play, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. I don't want to do that. But my sister was like, yeah, I'll try that out. And as soon as she went to her first practice and decided to try lacrosse, I was like, okay, wait, I can't have her doing something like this that I'm not also doing. I got to also be involved. So after the second practice, I joined the team too, just to copy what my sister was doing, really. And I kind of had an attitude about it. I was like, I don't want to be doing this, but I ended up loving the sport after the first day. So I started playing in middle school for club teams, and then really to watch a team grow, and to see where they're at now. Like now they just finished their first year of varsity lacrosse, and when we started, we were just a like extracurricular team. So it was really neat. And then I started looking at colleges probably also around my sophomore year is when I started really getting serious about that. And I had probably a list of a top 8 schools where I had been communicating with different coaches and kind of going back and forth with them. And I ended up choosing Converse just because financially that one made the most sense. And I felt like that school was the best fit with what I wanted, and where I placed all my values. And now I've been doing some coaching for elementary, middle. I've even done some high school coaching, and I hope that once I graduate, coaching is something that I always stick with. I think lacrosse will always be a part of my life now. It's just been a part of who I am and what I do for so long. I don't think I'll ever be able to really walk away from it. So it's something I hope to pursue for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I totally feel that. It's like, well, I like missed one spring and I was like, I'll never do that again. That was weird. I was like, what do I do in the spring? Wonderful. So happy to have you on here, especially because you came from our area, because it is a thing to be recruited out of kind of a grow the game area, which I would still classify North Carolina under. If you could go back, what would you have done differently on your recruiting journey?
So I think I don't want to like what I say to be misunderstood, because college coaches can always be switched out and changed. For example, I've had 3 different coaches in 3 years switch out, but hopefully that doesn't happen. However, I would always say to make sure you get along with the coaches you're talking to. I do think that how you get along with your coach and what kind of coach you have really can make or break your college athlete experience. If you have a coach that you really just dislike and you have a hard time with, I think that can make your college athlete career pretty hard. And it's tough to stick with at that point. So I would just encourage you to get to know the coach and the coaching style. There's tons of different coaching styles, not some that are good or bad, but just differences. And so finding out how you like to be coached and how you don't like to be coached, I think can be really helpful when you're looking at how you get along with the coaches and things. I wish I would have looked at that more. I was more concerned with what coaches thought of me, and I didn't really take the time to also play in how I felt about the coach and how I got along with them.
That's such a good point. And especially when you're going into these conversations, again, it translates to going in for a job. Like you're interviewing that person as well, right? It's not just you being interviewed. Because if you're the creator of your experience, then you want to make sure it's a fit for you as well. So wonderful. Thank you. I'm back. Okay. Glad to be back. We're just going to keep going and see what happens. Okay, wonderful. Um, Cam, what would you say the best part of the recruiting process for you was? Like what do you look back fondly on?
I love how many different schools I looked at, like schools that would never have necessarily been on my list before reaching out to the coaches. I definitely think it opened up my perspective because I was looking at schools that before I started looking at lacrosse at all, I had my own list of like maybe my top 5 schools. And as I continued on in my journey, none of those top 5 made it very far because I realized that as my perspective changed and I saw more schools, what I wanted in schools also changed. And that was really fun for me to see. I went to schools that I had to get drugged to the campus, and I was just kind of kicking my feet. And I ended up loving those campuses and the schools, and it really surprised me how just changing my perspective on things opened up more schools to me.
Super cool. Really, really good point. Yeah, the journey, it's fun. Like you get to explore new things, new parts of yourself. Wonderful. And what made you decide to pursue collegiate lacrosse? I know you started playing lacrosse because of your sister, but what made you decide to pursue collegiate lacrosse?
I think for a couple reasons. Part of it was that I just wasn't willing to let it go. If I look back on my senior night of high school, if I knew that that would have been the end of my lacrosse career right then, like, I would have been devastated. Like at that point, even now, like I'm just not ready to be done with lacrosse. I'm gonna play. Very competitive and I get very into what I do. And when I commit to something, I'm 110% in. Like I put my whole heart into it. And playing a club team, not that there's anything wrong with playing club at a school, but it just wasn't for me. It wasn't the right fit because I knew that I wanted to be surrounded by people who wanted to win just as badly as I did and who were willing to work just as hard as I was working. And so knowing that I wanted to surround myself by those kind of people and to continue playing lacrosse is kind of what led me to decide to keep playing in college.
Nice. I love it. Um, what would you say is the biggest difference between college lacrosse and high school?
I think partly what Coach Caitlyn was saying is the commitment and the time. The time for me was crazy different because, and I kind of wish that the coaches I talked to would have been a little bit more open about some of the time commitments off of the field because we obviously have our practice, which would go usually 6 days a week. We would have practice, but we would also have 5 days a week with lifting or conditioning. And then we would do team bonding, which was, I mean, I've loved it. It's a lot of fun, but it also, like, you have to keep in mind, it does take time out of your schedule to do things like that with your team. And then we've always had, and I think some schools are different, but my school has always had like volunteer service hour requirements. So my team would go and do service work, and all of those things are great, but they do take up a lot of time. And so I think that's a huge difference. And another thing is the pace of practices and games. Everything moves so fast. Like the transition between different drills and practice is very quick. If you're not understanding a drill, you better get in the back of the line because probably the rest of the team is understanding and you just got to catch yourself up. And games are like that too. I mean, everything just, it feels, at first, my freshman year, I felt like everything I did, I was moving in fast motion. But it's fun. I mean, it's a great change of pace. I loved it because by the end of high school, I was kind of ready for the quicker pace. And I kind of got tired of some of my teammates were kind of dragging behind. I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. Like, let's keep moving forward. Like, and that's definitely the atmosphere you get at any college level you're going to play at.
Such good points. Yeah, it does. It like speeds up. That's why in practices we're always like jog to get water, jog back, like da 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 da. Like I cannot with the slow mosey around. Like that's not the plan.
Coach Cam and I know that very well. We were doing that a lot today.
Yeah. I can't with that. Gotta be quick because we want to get so much done. All right, last question, Cam. What is your favorite part of playing collegiate lacrosse?
I think my favorite is the relationships that I've created, not only with my teammates, because my team really has become a second family to me. And I love being able to hang out with them. I love knowing that every single one of my teammates really has my back on and off the field. I have that support group, and that's awesome. But even just relationships outside of my teammates, like I've created great relationships with my coaches, with other coaches, with some of our athletic administration. And I think I go to a very small college, and I think that's part of why I love that small school feel, is because I think helps me feel like I'm supported no matter what I do. Like leaving, I know I could always call one of them and fall back on them if I needed help with something. So I think that having all those relationships and connections helps you, even as you leave, like as you kind of part ways with some of them, I think you can always keep communication up with them.
Totally. Some of my dearest people have been people I played on teams with or coached with, or been coached by. So wonderful. And it's awesome to be coaching with you again. Cam, thank you so much. Caitlyn, thank you so much. This has been super helpful, super valuable. And I know you guys will continue to offer so much support to our program, and you're definitely wonderful resources for our girls. And so a final note on next steps, what you can do after listening to this video or being on this video is, number one, if you are interested in playing collegiate lacrosse, make sure your current coach, all of the coaches that you currently have, make sure they know, so they can continue to think about you and keep you top of mind. What you want, this is my puppy. What you want is to kind of become a nice project for a coach. Like you want them to be on your side. You want them to be vouching for you. You want to be top of mind to them, because that will lend itself well to having them as a great referral down the road. And number two, follow along on the Miners YouTube as it continues to be added to. We're going to be adding to it different stages or covering those phases that we talked about. But we'll also be adding more training, more opportunities to grow. And then number three is start looking at those phases that we talked about, the mindset phase, the planning phase, connections, negotiations. Like, where are you along that path? Are you at the beginning? Great. Recognize where you are, and then you can start to build a plan around it. So if you're here live, thank you for being here on a Sunday night, on a holiday weekend. I'm super grateful y'all came because I wanted to get this just out to our people. And it will be able to live there for as long as we decide to keep it on the internet. And know that I'm here as an ultimate resource, ultimate guide. And if it's a director in the future, know your mentors and continue to recruit them as your teammates. And my puppy has reached the end of her rope, and we did it in 45 minutes. So thank you guys, and good night if you're on live. If you're not, I don't know what it is, but see ya.